so much. Thank you so much. And welcome to the Big Questions podcast, where we talk about love, death, sex, religion, and all the big questions worth asking. I'm your host, Robert K. Elder, and today we're talking with Joanne Zienty. She's the author of The Things We Save and winner of the soon-to-be-famous Illinois Author Contest. We are here in the beautiful River Room at the Gail Borden Library in Elgin, Illinois. We're before a live audience. And the Big Questions is sponsored by Shure, purveyors of professional microphones and headphones. You can check them out at shure.com. That's SHURE.com. The Big Questions podcast is part of the Sun-Times Media Locals podcast network. And we're also going to have some train noise. I was told it's frequent, so just consider it part of the ambiance. Joanne, welcome.
I'm thrilled to be here.
Well, and
very close to your microphone.
Yeah. Well, think of it as your friend. So, I think we need to get right to the important stuff. And I need you to tell me how Snooki from the Jersey Shore changed your life.
I would not be sitting here if it were not for Snooki Polizzi from the Jersey Shore program. I was, a writer trying to get my book published and going from agent to agent. And I was hearing the refrain, your writing's great, love the strong character, great plot, but it doesn't fit my list. I didn't really know what that meant other than they didn't want to try to publish me. So my pet peeve, one of my pet peeves, I have many, is celebrity authors. They don't write their own books, and even their ghostwriters are pretty bad as well.
How do you really feel? That's what I want to know.
That's how I really feel.
Okay, just check.
And so I was struggling to get this book published, and it's almost a full-time job finding an agent. And I already have a full-time job, and I was getting pretty discouraged. But then I read in the newspaper that Snooki had a book deal. And that really just put me over the edge. I was like, Snooki has a book deal? Snooki Polizzi, the Guido from the Jersey Shore, has a book deal? And at that point, I decided to go ahead with my self-publishing adventure. And I discovered that Amazon has a publishing wing called CreateSpace. And it's totally free. You don't have to pay money. All you have to do is kind of have a little bit of tech savvy to turn your book into a PDF and upload it. And that's when I pressed the button. But I have been remiss, Rob, because I've never really thanked her. So I really want to say, Snooki, if you're out there listening, thank you from the bottom of my heart. I owe it all to you.
Now, what about the situation? How do you feel about the situation?
The situation? Okay,
I didn't read his book. And before we get into this journey of self-publishing and then again winning this contest out of 103 other authors, I want to talk a little bit about your dedication. And she's trying to read my notes from across the table. Look at that. You have two, and I'm going to begin with the last one first, and that is a very special thank you to everyone who ever told me no. So expound on that. Give us names.
Well, I actually have kept every rejection email from all the agents.
That's a very F. Scott Fitzgerald thing to do.
I kept them all, although they mostly said the same thing. It starts with people who tell you to have big dreams, but at the same time they tell you, well, but still you need to be practical. You need to be practical. Writing, you can't make any money writing, so you need to be practical. And there's a lot of people who told me no in my life. And what I have to say to them is written in a CeeLo Green song, but I can't say it right now.
That's nice. Maybe that'll be our outro music. That'll be great. And just a quick primer on the book. Again, you self-published it in 2011. It won again the soon-to-be-famous Illinois Author Contest just very recently here, and it's about essentially a woman going back to clean out her grandmother's home with her estranged father. Her name is Claire. It took you 6 years to write the book, is that right?
Yes.
And what she finds is this box, this Marshall Fields box, and you use it as sort of a device to explore family secrets and relationships and that sort of thing. And I think everyone has a box of some sort, some little suitcase where you keep mementos and whatnot. So I want to ask you very directly, what's in your box?
I have lots of boxes, actually.
And would people be able to make sense of it? That's the other thing.
Depending on which one they looked in. I have a trunk of items from my parents' home, which include things from my father's war experience. I have 2 decanters, and I think they're from the 1960 presidential election, whiskey decanters. One is in the shape of a donkey and one is in the shape of an elephant. And I've often been tempted to look on eBay to see what I could get for them, but then I think, no, I'm never going to sell these.
Somebody in the back row is doing that right now.
They were
so come see us afterwards. Let us know what it is.
I mean, they were my dad's.
Yeah.
So that's, some things in that trunk, mementos from their lives. And I also have things that I carry with me every day from them in, every time I get a new purse, I have to transfer this little baggie of things that I carry. And most of them are mementos that from my mother, my father, and my brother.
Tell me about one.
One of them is a St. Christopher medal from my brother. And he used to wear it until he passed away. And then I took it. I guess I kind of stole it. I'm sure my mother probably would have wanted it, but I took it and I secreted it away. And now it's in my purse because he passed away when he was 16 and I was 9. And I certainly did idolize him very much. And it was a very traumatic experience. So to have that, to have something that he touched and I still get to carry it and I can touch it and think that his fingerprints are still there is very important to me.
Does it make a difference that St. Christopher is the patron saint of travelers?
Well, yes. I mean, all of life is a journey and we're always traveling. So.
Mm-hmm. So your protagonist is Claire, and there's also a death in her family that she's sorting through. So, again, another point blank. Are you Claire? How much of you is Claire?
Do I look like a ball-busting bitch? You're gonna have to bleep that one out.
No, we're not gonna bleep that one out. I did warn the librarians that I was gonna have to spend so much time bleeping this. But yes, now that you bring it up.
Am I Claire? The short answer, do I ever do anything short? I mean, my book is 400 pages long, so I won't give you the short answer. The short answer would be no, but I think the thing is when you write in the first person, that establishes that immediacy and that intimacy that I think people do. I mean, I as a reader do that when I read first person. People tend to look at it as a confessional. I mentioned that there were traumas in my life, emotions when my brother passed away that I certainly did let Claire experience. And I think every good writer does that, mines things from their lives to do that.
That's Hemingway, inventing from experience.
So, no, I'm not Claire, but there are certain emotions there and feelings and experiences that I did have in my life. But the thing that really ticks me off is that no one ever asks me about Peach. Am I Peach?
So tell everybody who Peach is.
So Rob, Sugar, are you gonna let me explain about Peach?
So I think we need to give our audience a primer on who Peach is.
Okay, Peach is a Southern belle who is Claire's aunt by marriage, and she becomes a pseudo mother figure for Peach, because Peach's mother, Claire's mother, is rather cold and not invested in her as she should be. And so Peach kind of takes Claire under her wing. And Claire winds up really preferring Peach to her own mother and suffers a lot of guilt for what happens in the novel over that. So,
I mean, Claire's a very complex, protagonist. And so what is it like then to carry what basically starts out as an unlikable protagonist? How challenging is that to endear a reader? What's that like to live with as a writer?
I'm always a little confused as to why people, if it's a woman and she's challenging and unlikable, there seems to be a different attitude as opposed to when it's a male character who's rather unlikable. I think if people read the book, they'll come to understand why she's so angry and where that's all coming from. And yes, she has her unlikable moments, but I think we all do. I don't think she is any different in having those emotions. So I would hope that people would realize that why she turned out like she did once they've kind of read the book and experienced her journey through there. But there are many male characters who are very unlikable, and they never get that question asked.
Well, also, let me just point out that you called her unlikable in the previous interview.
I did. Well, she is a little unlikable.
I'm just saying, if we're going to make this adversarial, we could do it. I'm just quoting you. But she's not unsympathetic. She's just tough.
She is. She's fierce.
Yeah.
One of the librarians said she was fierce, and I love that because she is fierce. She will say, eventually she learns to say it out loud, but what you get in the novel is everything that she's thinking because I'm in that first person. And I would challenge any woman in the room to deny that some of the things that Claire thinks that they have not thought themselves.
Now I want to circle back to your first dedication. And that is, and I'm going to mess up the name, so you need to help me. And it's to those mentors who encouraged me along the way, including Molly
Ramanjuan
Daniels, who taught me the importance of the object. Mm-hmm. So tell us about Molly.
Molly was this little tiny Indian woman who I met. I took a writing class at the University of Chicago Graham Extension School downtown. It's just for adult learning. And she was teaching creative writing. And I took the class with her. And she was the toughest critic I have ever encountered. It was basically short stories that we were writing at the time. And she then also had kind of an independent class. She had a school called the Clothesline School of Writing. So after the Graham class ended, I continued working with her. And she would have us read our stories, if they were worthy, at Jimmy's The Woodlawn Tap in Hyde Park on a Sunday afternoon. And so that's what everyone wanted to earn, is the read. But she was just very tough. But she would have us do these biofeedback exercises. And she would have us close our eyes and sit, and she would recite this mantra. And then we would go through it, and we would be envisioning this mantra, and then she would end, and she would have us open our eyes and fist our hands, and then we would begin to write. And her point was to focus on an object in our lives or in our memories and to just write, just purely write. Don't edit, just write. Don't stop writing. And just get it all out. And then, hence the clothesline, you would leave it hanging there for a while, and then you would come back to revisit it. And I remember there was one story which, I thought was the most fabulous story I'd ever written. And in fact, it contains a nugget it contained a nugget which later became a chapter in the novel.
So you were right. Okay, go ahead.
But no, because when she read it and gave it back to me, she had all these notes in the margin. The reader does not care. The reader does not care. The reader does not care. And then there was one little paragraph that she outlined. And she said, here is your story. Take this and start to write. So I think taking those classes with her really, really brought me a lot farther than I'd ever been as a writer.
And tell me about just, again, the importance of the object.
We live our lives, and so much of what we live with, is very disposable. But her point was, there are memories that are invested in those objects. And that was one thing that really kind of inspired me to start thinking about the things that we do save in our lives and what they mean to us and why we save them, whether it's good memories, whether it's those things that other people had that we keep those connections. And so I started thinking about that in my head. Well, I have these things, other people have these things. I think most people have things that they want to save or why they save them. And so I started, exploring that. And I think that really through those exercises that she did, really brought that to focus for me.
And there are some other books like this. I think the most famous is Tim O'Brien's The Things They Carried, about the little bits of biography that these Vietnam soldiers carried with them. So is that an influence at all?
Yes, I actually love that book. I think it was a pretty controversial book because I think it's sort of written in a nonlinear fashion, and it can be very brutal and gruesome. But that's war. War is brutal and gruesome. And I think that was an inspiration because, like I said, I think we all carry things through our lives. And we're all, in a way, warriors as we go through life.
Mm-hmm. Well, and in this book, and I was just noticing, again, we're in this gorgeous library, and they have this display that sort of replicates this Marshall Fields box. Mm-hmm. And inside, in the book, the Marshall Fields box has a braid of hair and a broken 45 record, and again, these things that sort of are secrets into this woman's life and human relationships. And there was a really interesting line in a review of your book from Kirkus, and they said basically that the book was about not only what we save, but what we need to forget. And so can you talk about forgetting as a healing mechanism?
I don't know if we ever truly forget things, especially painful things, except maybe childbirth. I do think you forget the pain of childbirth. Otherwise, there would never be another one born on the earth. Never a second child.
Every woman in here is nodding, basically. Everyone.
But I think it's more important, not necessarily to forget, but the forgiveness part of it, I think, is the most important. I don't think people ever really forget. I mean, the saying is forgive and forget. I don't think you do forget. I think you still remember things. But with Claire, there's a good way of keeping things and holding on to them. It helps you feel closer to the person who's left. And then there's a bad thing when you're letting it keep all that anger inside of you and not letting you move on to reach that point of forgiveness. So I think in the book, there's a lot of people in that book who are going through or not going through the grief process. They're kind of arrested. They've not fully gone through it. And I think that's a really important issue in that book.
Speaking of Arrested, tell me about your family's reaction to the book.
Well, it was funny. I went to a family reunion, not this past summer, but the summer before, and everyone who had read it enjoyed it, but it was really funny because they all thought it was their side of the family. And then they wanted to pull me aside and tell me more dark secrets. And they said, okay, this can be your next novel. I said, okay.
Well, and I do want to talk about the next novel because I know what it is a little bit. But I also want to talk a little bit more about your publishing process and your I guess the journey and how you write. And I'm specifically interested in how the book you set out to write is different from the one you published.
It's a lot darker than I thought it would be. I was at a book club last night with wonderful ladies who I didn't know them. They just invited me to come to their book club, and I said, sure. And the one woman said, when, she read the newspaper article and the back cover, she thought it would be a little bit lighter and just, about, all the things we save in our lives. And I said, no. But I don't think I set out to write the book that darkly. I think when the characters came to life, they're the ones who took me on that journey. And I know people think, well, wait a second, you're the author. You took them where you wanted to go. And that's not always the case. I think sometimes the characters pull authors in the ways that they want to go, that what they want to express. So when I started writing it, I did think it would be a little bit lighter and a little more frivolous, and then it took a dive off the deep end.
Well, and I mean, do you truly feel like you're sort of at the mercy of your characters, that they sort of take over?
I think my writing is best when I am at the mercy of them and they do take over. I think that's when I write my most beautiful sentences and I really get the metaphors down that I want to get. And I think when I'm trying to force the character to go somewhere, that's when I later go back and say, no, this isn't going to work.
Do you wonder what they're doing right now?
I miss them. I do miss them. I miss them. I miss not writing them.
So I want to talk a little bit about your next book, and then I want to open it up for questions. And your next book is a YA novel about future in the Great Lakes area, and it's a dystopian future. And I just want to ask, is there any other kind of future but a dystopian future?
Well, if there wasn't, we wouldn't have the good old days, I guess. No, it's true. I mean, I think, especially now, I mean, yes, it's really taken off, particularly for young adult literature. And but we've always had dystopian novels. I mean, some of the greatest science fiction novels are dystopian. Fahrenheit 451, which is a touchstone for me, by Ray Bradbury, and Brave New World. So dystopia has always been there. I don't know quite why it's taken off.
What does it allow you to do, just as a writer? What does it give you license to explore?
Well, again, you can be as dark as you want to be, I guess.
That's the title of the book, by the way.
As dark as I want to be. I think it just lets you kind of have free reign to take your imagination and run with it. And it also gives you opportunities for heroics. If you want to end with something uplifting, you can do that. It also lets you go on the hero's quest, the traditional hero's quest. And right now it just seems to be, I don't know, adolescents just really seem to be thinking in dystopian. But I do have to tell you that I may be putting it on the back burner because at the end of the summer, I do most of my writing in the summer because I can't. It's hard for me to write during the school year. I'm just exhausted when I get home. And I squeeze it in on the weekends. But at the end of the summer, I had reached the point in the novel where I was doubting it. You always reach that point in a novel where you're just doubting yourself. And so I may put it on the back burner, and then I have 2 other ideas that I'm kind of looking at. So an exclusive.
Oh. What's the opposite of dystopian? So it's a
one is
past
yeah,
book.
it's a hope, yeah. One is more of a lighthearted read, and the other one is dark again, but in a different way.
Well, speaking of heroic journeys, I think it's time to open you up to questions to this obviously ravenous crowd. Go ahead and yell out your question, then I'll repeat it on mic, and then Joanne will answer. Yes, sir. So the question is, what advice do you give to a young writer? What advice do you give to a rapidly aging writer?
I think he's reached that critical point. He's 40 years old and he wants to get published. And
He's 40 years old and he's handsome. What the mic is really not picking all this up, but let's just pretend it is. What advice to new writers?
Be true to your own voice. Find your own voice. When you're looking for an agent, often they want to know who you write like. Who are you like? Who are you like? Who do you write like? All I've ever been told about being a good writer is to believe in your own voice and to write as yourself. Has he tried to get published and been kind of rejected? Mm-hmm.
just the second part of that, if you will, some of the advice that I've heard that makes a lot of sense to me is to join a writer group, get an intimate group, and get feedback.
Mm-hmm.
He's very reluctant to do that.
Well, and that's what working with Molly Daniels helped me. I mean, she was great at giving feedback. So I would say get feedback on your writing, get honest feedback on your writing. Don't have your best friends read it probably because they might not give you such honest feedback. But if you can get a writing teacher who will be really honest and rip you to shreds and then build you back up again, I think that's the next step. And to think about self-publishing. I mean, like I said, don't cost nothing.
It's also like a lot of very famous authors are in writers groups. Chuck Palahniuk, who wrote Fight Club, Jean Auel, who wrote Clan of the Cave Bear. They talk about this sort of nurturing community they have, and it's this process, and they do it weekly or bi-weekly. Mm-hmm. Next question. And the question is, how did you find CreateSpace.com?
I was just, Googling out there, and I had, as a person who uses Amazon to purchase books, I did notice one day that they had this little blurb about, self-publishing. Now, there was no way I was going to pay anyone to publish my book, which has kind of been in the past, what called vanity publishing. You'd have to pay somebody to publish your book, give you the copies, and then you go out and, try to sell them. And I wasn't going to pay anybody to publish it. And through CreateSpace, it's totally free. I mean, you can pay for things if you want an editor. You can pay them to edit your book. I felt I didn't need one. You can pay for, them to do the cover for you. I felt I could do that on my own. And so I just explored it. You just create an account. Like I said, it's free. You turn your manuscript into a PDF. You upload it. You press. You're ready to publish. They send you a proof copy so that you can proofread it, or I would advise you not to proofread it yourself because you won't catch anything because you're so familiar with what you're writing. Have somebody you trust proofread it, and then it's out there. And you can also get both print and ebook. When I put it out there, I really didn't have any expectations. Like I said, I did it because Snooki had a publishing deal, and I know, seriously, I wasn't going to let this thing sit on my hard drive because, damn it, I thought it was good. I thought it was good enough. And, the rest is history.
And also, please tell the story very briefly. You went out on deadline on the year's coldest day, like a deadly cold day, 40 below zero. Can you tell me that story?
I read about the soon-to-be famous contest, and it was the deadline. I think was January 6th, and I read about it in the newspaper maybe January 4th, and one of those days was a Sunday, and that was, if you remember, last winter, snow, cold. Right then, all the school districts were closed. It was right after the Christmas break. And so I was off. And I said, I got to get to my local library to have them nominate my book. So sure, it was 30 below, wind chill 70 below. I hop in my car. It started. I drove to my Wheaton library. I race inside. I didn't even know how cold it was because I was just so frantic. And I was told that the librarian who was handling the contest was not there. She was out sick that day, and she wasn't scheduled to work the next day. And okay, there was the deadline. So I was very deflated, and I trudged back to my car, and that's when I noticed how cold it really was. And as I'm driving home, I'm realizing something to myself, that I am a librarian. I can nominate myself. And I did.
That's right. That's very punk rock. You got to do it yourself. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am. So how does Amazon then market your book?
Well, they don't. They don't really do any marketing for you. I mean, it's there on their website, online. So no, they're not sitting there marketing it for you. It was submitted for a Kirkus review, and it was a very complimentary review. So that was one positive. But no, they really don't do anything for you. You have to do it yourself. Now, my motivation, like I said, Snooki, I just wanted it out there. I was just going to get the damn thing out there just because. But it was funny. 2 months later, I was really wallowing in self-pity, and I Googled myself just to see. I had sold a couple of copies. So I thought, oh, somebody's buying it. And I discovered that my book was in a library in Bangor, Maine. It was on the new fiction list.
That meant that Stephen King could read it.
Well, maybe he was the one who requested it. I don't know. I never know who wanted. Yeah. It's pretty dark. So as far as I know, that was the first library who had it. And that was 2 months after it was published. So like I said, with a full-time job, I really wasn't going to be able to do very much promotion of it. I just wanted it out there, and I thought, I'm going to put it out there and see what happens. It's really only been since the soon-to-be famous. I mean, the other libraries did get it. I go on WorldCat regularly to see who has my book. There were some libraries in Ohio that bought it, some in Texas. Maybe they liked peach. I don't know. I still want to use a Southern accent in this interview.
You should.
Can I talk this way the rest
I
of
think for your next book, you need a pen name. Who else?
Could you get a little bit more specific about the writing process? We talked about writing during the summer, and I think it's how do you keep yourself disciplined?
So
you wake up every morning and think, oh, God, I want to write all day.
So can you please talk about your writing process and I guess your schedule and discipline?
I'm a morning writer, so I do like to write in the morning. That's when I feel I'm most alert and that I get my most work done. Usually what I do is I go for a run. That really clears my head. I get some of my best ideas when I'm running, and then I come home and I sit down and I try to write for a couple of hours. I'm lucky. My family likes to sleep in late, so, they don't, they don't bother me in the morning. And, I try to do it regularly every day. I try to write at least 300 words a day. And some days it's like pulling teeth just to get 300 words. And other days, I'll sit there with 750, 1,000 words. Now, half of those 1,000 words may be crappy, but so I try to write every day. During the school year, it doesn't happen. It may happen on the weekends. It may happen over winter break or spring break, but I try to be very focused in the summer.
And I don't think we've told these nice people what your day job is.
I'm a school librarian. I work in the Des Plaines School District, and it's in an elementary school, so none of the kids can read my book, which is a little disappointing to them, but, I tell them, maybe the next one, and then we talk about the writing process, and we even talk about self-publishing.
I was wondering, since you do most of your writing in the summer, during the school year, are you carrying the characters in your head?
Oh, yeah.
So on mic here, since you write during the summer, during the school years, are you haunted by your characters?
Yes, I do carry them with me. It's the one thing about writing is you've got these characters and they're rattling up here in your head and you just want to get them out of your head and onto the paper. So I do spend a lot of time just thinking about them. Even if it's on the back burner, they'll still be present in my head.
And we have one last question over here. So this nice young lady is asking, or complimenting you and saying, that's at the loudest train ever, complimenting you, and it's not messing around. All right, we'll wait for it to pass. It's Stephen King. It's the whole Stand By Me thing. That's what it is. I mentioned him and he sent a train. No, she was saying how much she enjoyed your characters and missed them after the book was gone. So is there a possibility that they might show up in a future volume?
Well, I'm glad you enjoyed and that you missed them. That's probably the greatest compliment a writer can have, is that when the book is over, you're missing the characters. I was asked that question last night at the book club I was at, and these ladies said, they wanted to know more about some of the other characters, which, since I was writing from a first-person perspective, you didn't get the full story. You just got Claire's side of the story. Would I think about revisiting them? Maybe. I mean, I love them all, even the really nasty ones. I still have to say I love them. So it could be a possibility that I would revisit them.
I think that's a great place to end. Joanne, thank you for being with us and being such a wonderfully game interviewee.
Oh, thank you very much.
The Big Questions podcast is part of the Sun Times Media Local Podcast Network. Our music, Not This Train, is by Hernan Sanchez. Thanks again, folks.